Okay, I just thought I'd come straight back in and think for a moment about, I want to learn what the trick is to have this pointer update inside this program, because it doesn't always work. Is the pointer visible? I won't be able to tell until I look at the video. It's not really fast enough to pick up my terrible handwriting. That says gradient rendering. Render generally, I open an OpenGL canvas, or a monkey canvas, a Mojo canvas. OpenGL sort of, I don't know. Sorry, editable OpenGL texture, sort of. I don't know what it is, doesn't matter. The point is it's using Mojo and OpenGL. For gradient rendering, I don't want to do that. What I would like is basically my own sort of version of the display, array of pixels, counted as integers initially, just because all I want to do is record how many times the line crosses an individual pixel, in quotes. So what I want, I think, is basically like an array of integers. So I could just open an integer array. And of course that'll be linear, just a single long list of integers, but I can do the little trick to find the x and y position, or to find which index in that array I access for a given x and y position that I want to be written to in the screen. And when the line passes through an individual pixel, what it means is just adding 1 to the integer in the array. So I'm not really drawing anything useful here, I'm scribbling and doodling as I think. Now, actual arrays, I don't know if I do want to use an array. I could, and I'm tempted to just because I'm familiar with them. But they offer more functionality than I want in this piece of code. I'll close this for now. I have now modified my list. And it makes me think that I should just get rid of this include, this piece of source I have called Mojo Extra, and just make my own modification. The actual Mojo source. But anyway, for the time being, I will rid myself of those so I don't think about my what feels like indiscretions. And I'll look through this source instead. This is the monkey source again. And what I'm looking for is like databanks, because I don't really know anything about them. And I don't really know where I will find them. And or what even they're like, data buffers maybe they're called. Maybe I could check the docs, but actually what I tend to prefer just hunting through. What sort of places might they be? Maybe in Monkey? Probably not. My instinct is probably STD somewhere. Looking through these, not 132, wouldn't be in there, would it? Threads, Steamworks, MX Async Audio Collections, it's not really a collection. Fiber, File System, Geom Graphics Memory, DataBuffer. Creates a data buffer with a newly allocated or existing block of memory. If you provide a start pointer value when creating a data buffer, it should point to a valid block of memory at least length bytes in size. This pointer will be used as the base address when peeking to the data buffer, and will be returned by the data property. Such data buffer cannot be resized. If you do not provide a start value, a block of memory length bytes long is allocated to you. This memory will be released when the data buffer is discarded or becomes unreachable by the garbage collector. What is the source? So there's the data buffer class, and here is all its bits and pieces. Load, save, See, the minute I start to look at this I think, I should have probably looked at this a long time ago, but anyway, never mind. Load, save, decompress, compress, copy to, destination, source, destination offset count, slice. And this extends resource. I hardly really got to grips with understanding resources either. For all my love of coding with Monkey, I dabble in the shallows so much. But okay, so I see a load of poke and peek things, and unsigned ints, I guess, will be what I'm poking, or peeking. And an offset int. Poke and peek. So, length, byte order. Initial byte order of the data. Well, I don't like. It's got a default here of little endian. I'm the person reading to and writing from this data buffer. I reckon I can use what I want. Or I reckon I can leave it default and be happy with it. And I'm not passing something in, I am making a new one. Offset in int. In debug builds, a runtime error will... Okay, forget short, I want actual unsigned int. See, the thing is, probably an unsigned int is overkill. An int is probably an overkill. Like, if I remember right, a byte is 8 bits. So I'm guessing that a short is a 16. Although a short's not something I'm that familiar with. And ints and unsigned ints will be 32. Longs, I guess, are 64, unassigned longs, and doubles are 64, floats also being 32. So, yeah, and I can peek a string as well, interesting. Poke string, offset and value. Okay, well, never quite sure what the difference between a string and a C string is either. I find myself having to load and save C strings to make them work. Anyway. So, well, why don't I just think I will use a data buffer, and think I'll just make some guesses about how it works, as always, and then when my code crashes, I will know that I have myself to blame. So, what happens now? Now I think again about what actually happens when you click the render button. My goodness, what a lot of bits and pieces. Somewhere around here I've got something like output anim, and it calls render, as does output image call render. And in render, which is somewhere around here, like here, you pass a file name and you pass a value. And the value is the distance through the animation. And this takes the file name and the value, creates the image, and dumps it to the file. Picks the correct point of the animation, creates the image, and dumps it to the file. Now, I basically want two versions of this. This version works under all given circumstances because it does this. It sets the blend mode based on your draw mode, and these are, these are all just, actually I should have, you can see I've added draw type gradient onto the end of draw type addition so that it will draw something for the time being if you select gradient. But that's not really what should happen. In fact, before this point, if the draw type is gradient, I need to bail on this whole process because the other draw types just equate to OpenGL type draw types, opaque, alpha, and addition, or additional, additive. This does not, and so these ones involve opening that OpenGL type canvas, image canvas, and writing to the image. Draw curve, there it is. And so I need a sort of alternative way of going inside render, and certainly an alternative way of going inside draw curve. Draw curve draws the curve. It's not that long. It's longer than it needs to be because these are just matrix operations which could be popped inside could be popped inside. This is the recursive part. These matrix operations, they are inside methods in many places, just I took them out. The thing that remains as like a function call or a method call is drawLine. And that's the Mojo drawLine class. I don't think that's the very fastest way to draw it, even with OpenGL. It's just that it's a nicer line than my own drawLine, I think. It's just the way I ended up doing it. It's a bit janky, actually, the fact that I use these two different methods. But so it goes. So, as you can see, this is referring to out canvas, which isn't like local to draw curve or anything. Out canvas, yeah, it's a global. It's not real nice, is it, the way I'm doing that? These are things, yeah, things dedicated to rendering the curve, including an image and a canvas. Although they do only get created while the curve is being rendered. So anyway, yeah, I need a way of diverting. The same thing needs to happen. I need to be able to call render, file name, animation position. But almost none of this needs to happen the same way. This bit, yeah, sure, I check to make sure the right things exist. Corner set equals project corner set. Corner set to vertices. Line equals v length. v length. Yeah, okay. This is my vertex class. I have such bad names for things. It's one of the videos I will do soon will just be spending half an hour first off changing what the content of corners is called. Verts is going to go. Anyway, for the time being, let me think about this. Number of segments is the number of segments. I make a new matrix. I do this bit of jiggery-pokery, which is it is redundant, but what it does, let me just see, 1 divided by the project output scale. Yeah, so I figure out a matrix which arranges the points relative to the display that you want, the output display you want. So that orange box that was being controlled on the screen, that's the size and shape of where your output image will be drawn from, if you know what I mean, inside the larger display. So if I remember right, what this bit does is transforms the vertices to be relative to the output display. At the moment they're all just in world space, and you scroll around them. They get transformed by the worktop matrix. Now I need them relative to the display. Then I do a bit of faffing, which is this: use unit matrix to define unit set inside our matrix set. Inside our matrix set. I don't know what I mean by inside our matrix set, but I do know that I do this thing which is redundant, which is determining this little unit set. Which is like the set of points that define the curve, you know, the largest set of segments, just arranged around the x-axis, with the first point at 0, 0 and the last point at 1, 0. And it is redundant because I can make a single matrix which performed that transformation and then the transformation's out. But I just like thinking that I have this set which is this unit set. And then I determine this set of matrices, which is, for every segment in the set, there's one matrix that determines the transformation from the unit set to that matrix, to that segment. And I can use that information alongside the first transformation, like a transformation that takes it from the unit set to the first position on the display, like the largest outside recursion, is defined here, and it's passed into the the recursive function. The recursive function also knows this set of matrices, which describes the change from the unit set to the position of an individual segment. So one matrix for every segment. So it uses the matrix that's passed into itself and these matrices to determine the position of every new array of points or array of lines that need to be drawn if it has reached the final recursion. I'm describing this really laboriously. If it has reached the final recursion, like here is the bit that draws the curve, and recursion, RR, remaining recursions, great name, RR, remaining recursions. PM past matrix. Really, really bad. But anyway. So if RR is 0, no further depths to reach. No more remaining recursions. So it actually draws the lines. As opposed to another level must be dropped to take the past matrix and multiply it by each segment matrix to pass to the next recursion. So that's it. So around about here or here. What does CI mean, I wonder? Is CI a thing I ever refer to again? Do I use it just even once? Or is it just a thing I thought I'd stick in like a cairn by the side of the road to confuse myself as I pass by afterwards? Do I really just not use CI at all? Like no little red mark has appeared, but then it wouldn't because CI was obviously determined previously. Where was CI determined? Oh, I'm so confused now. CI must have been determined. It wasn't throwing up a problem. can't. Oh yeah, I do. I've got CI, current vert to right during recursion of preview. Aha! I know why that is relevant. I think it's because some of this code is kind of replicated from the bit that renders the preview. I'm going to take that away because that actually is, yeah, from the old times. Rendering the preview is similar but has some differences. So at this point I've figured out the unit set and I've figured out the segment matrices, and right here I'll launch off into making an image. So I think it's here that I want to just part ways with what's been going on here. These little pieces are discardable pieces of information. They're used to determine the past matrix and the unit set and the segment matrices. The unit matrix, or the past, what do I actually want to pass here? On the way out, what I want out of this is a pix map. So that I can come out at this point, basically. So that in here I do a bunch of stuff that draws a pix map. In this case I use an OpenGL canvas, and in my gradient case I use a DataBuffer. Either way, a pix map is what I generate. Let me just check that a pix map is something that can dingling, dingling, ding, ding, brain. Something that can be passed to DataBuffer. That a DataBuffer, I suppose I can always just read the DataBuffer. Well, I mean, there's going to be a bit of processing in between my initial integer DataBuffer and the actual pix map, so really that might be it. It might be that I open a pix map. Yeah, that is what I will be doing, and then I'll be doing processing between DataBuffer and pix map, and I'll be writing individual pixels to the pix map. That's okay. So yeah, right between here and here. What I want to be doing is something like if your draw mode is one of these things, get a pix map one way, and if your draw mode is this thing, get a pix map another way. All these are the same, this one's different. So it's another of these weird situations where will I in the future be wanting to add even more draw modes? It's not maybe that likely. There are other ways I want to draw it, but it's not about draw modes. Those other ways aren't about draw modes. Well, 25 minutes. I feel like I've just chatted, and I have just chatted really. But I've got down to, I think, the point where I know hello, this is just rendering. So, and down here, above this, is just rendering. And I'll say, really, I need a function that returns a pix map. Pix map. That's hardly a note, but never mind. So, Let me run it. I do need to do a couple of things to complete the gradient editing window. Okay. Let me guess. CI. Yeah. Remaining recursions. In the preview curve. That is... Honestly, that is well bugging. It means that that's where I'm determining it. And of course it is. This is a thing I forget about. That is involved in the drawing of the preview curve. It happened to be inside workzone at one point, but I knew I could move it out of workzone and into render because workzone was in render, so it was still being used. Right, I think it was just a stray piece of code sitting in my whatever it was. Render function method function. My brain. Yeah, there are some things I need to do to the gradient set edit window just to finish it. I need to make the apply button work, and I need to make the threshold gadgets, which will be like these ones, not really true fields. You'll be able to open a field, but so this is not an attractive setup I've got here. Attractive. The other thing I definitely need to think about is the way that I render all of the guides, spots, everything on this screen. I want another spot, I'm afraid. Yeah. So that was really just a thinking time. Next time I will actually start to code the diversion that I'll take to render to a data buffer. I like to try and get it lined up like there. That's a spot that it lines up. Anyway. Okay.